Welcome to the China EV is More podcast. In the next hour or so, my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you smash that subscribe and like button so you don't miss anything from us in the future. I'm confident that Lei and I are two of the most knowledgeable people in the world doing this. So help us get the word out about this show to others. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. A little bit under the weather, Lei, that needs to get better before he jumps on a plane for 18 hours. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. And showing some love to Porsche too.
Yes. I did this on purpose.
We'll get to Porsche in a minute, but this is your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode number 206. So let's recap at this moment the tariff situation. China has 125% tariffs on everything imported from the U.S. The U.S. has the reciprocal 145% tariff.
Is it 145?
145% on things imported from China into the U.S. The 25% autos and parts tariff is still in place. The 25% steel and aluminum is still in place. And there's been talks of the listing of Chinese public listed companies in the US. There's been talks of possibly getting rid of the tariffs on the import of China EVs, made in China EVs into Europe. And that's the latest. But it's been constantly changing the last week. Every day it seems to be the number gets a little bit higher. And then China came out today saying, we're done with playing this game. 125% looks like the final tariff that they'll have because China says it's becoming a joke. We're not going to increase it anymore because it's economically meaningless if we do it. And whatever US decides to do, we're not going to budge. That's where we stand. And I just saw an interesting number. China imports about just under $20 billion of automotive components from the US. I just saw this number, so I thought that was interesting. So we kind of say that China, in terms of automotive EVs is not really that much affected, but everyone in some way or form, as you know, is affected. Yeah, I just start off with those kind of numbers for reference.
According to ChatGPT, the number one exporter for the United States is oil, seeds, and grains. Number two is mineral fuels and oils. And then third is electrical and electronic equipment. Now we're talking in 2024 there was about $144 billion worth of exports. So it sounds like the tariffs that the Chinese government has put on the United States commodities or products will hurt the heartland of America a little bit. And obviously the tariffs on Mexico and Canada are really creating a lot of uncertainty in my backyard, which is the state of Michigan and in the Midwest. I think there's been a muted response from the state a little bit, except for some of these economic development folks that I work with on a daily basis. One of my friends, Glenn Stevens, who is the head of Mish Auto, he's been in his car, driving around trying to advocate. He's been on media interviews. And so this is a really, really critical moment, I believe, because it's really starting to crystallize, Lei, that the Chinese are really, really competitive with their products. I don't think there's any denial anymore with that. I take that back. I think there's a certain percentage of Michigan folks and automotive folks, more rank and file than leadership, that are burying their heads in the sand and don't want to know how uncompetitive some of the automotive space is here in the United States. And I think there's a certain number or a certain group or a certain percentage of people that don't know what to do because everything coming out of the media outlets seems so dire. We can't catch up. You see Porsche's numbers, and that's one of the reasons of why I wore this shirt. But yeah, go ahead.
No, but what the issue is not so much the tariffs themselves. I think in terms of what you said, what they don't know what to do is, given what happened this past week, that every day could be something different that come out of Trump's mouth. How do you prepare for that? How do you, address what to do when one day he says, okay, we're going to pause. And then the next day or the day before, right, the stock market drops. And I think that's the uncertainty, the irrationality of these announcements. You can't plan for it. And that's the headache, right? More than the tariffs
United
themselves.
States, the uncertainty and the whiplashing, we feel it in the United States. Could you imagine if you were the leader of Germany, the leader of France, the leader of the UK, the leader of Australia? So they rely, generally speaking, historically, on the United States being the backstop to kind of set. They obviously have their own individual goals and initiatives and priorities, but the United States was a trusted source for, what's the right word, reliability. But I wrote in the newsletter that it'll be 12 years where it's just been a roller coaster ride following the United States, from a international policy, domestic policy, from an economic policy. And so in being back in Michigan, I feel it personally, with friends, ex-colleagues, family. So it's one thing to say, I'm going to put tariffs up. At least, Lei, that it's a serious situation, and then you plan around that. It's another thing to say, I'm going to put tariffs up, and then 2 days later, just kidding. I'm gonna pause this by 90 days because you can't. To your point, you can't be definitive with your response to the new policies, and it paralyzes businesses, to be quite frank. So
yeah, and there's been different response of actions from these automakers in the U.S. Employee pricing, no change pricing, given the kind of the inventory that they had, and then their stoppage of importing of vehicles. I don't know, Audi maybe announced something. Yeah, that is a great shirt. Exactly. And while I think on the China side, right, the actions are never stopping, as we've seen that new models, sales numbers that have come out, whether they're up or down, China seems to be if you look at these German automakers, right, the numbers that they announced, it looks like every region except China were up. And like we said, it hasn't bottomed out yet. And plus on top of that, the tariffs, both ways for some of these manufacturers. So and and this global trade war is now becoming really a China-U.S. trade war, pretty much, because other countries have been on pause. That everything went down back to the 10% base tariffs.
The only good news, Lei, is that because the Trump administration put a pause on tariffs for the other countries, the things that are coming from Vietnam, South Asia, they still should be around the same price, but everything else from China is going to increase significantly.
Yeah.
And I was reading this morning, preparing for this podcast, that there are ships now that are not going to leave China and so I don't want to create a panic, but they were like, there could be situations where in the next month or 6 or 7 weeks, there could be bare shelves in some stores.
You talk about these mom and pop shops, both in the US and in China, when here you have people that are stopping orders for Chinese products, and these mom and pop shops go out of business. And the trade, whatever the number was, like over $500 billion of trade, that could be cut in half between China and the US. And that'll affect tons of companies on both sides.
Yeah, I'm normally pretty. I think I'm able to kind of think through, try to play some 3D chess on some things, but I'm really at a loss now. Let's do this, Lei. You wanted to go over some more March numbers from the foreign automakers, so let's do that, and then we can move over to the EU. That rumor about the EU lifting tariffs on Chinese vehicles, because I'm sure you have a perspective and I have a perspective on that. So what other numbers? So the one thing, if you're wondering, people are wondering why I'm wearing the Porsche shirt, is because, like you said, they still haven't found the bottom in the China market. And we're talking, they might get to, it is 42% was their, they continuing to shrink 42%.
Yeah.
So they lost almost half of their sales. And this continues a downward trend that's been 3 years in the making.
Yeah, 42%, less than 10,000 units a quarter. That's psychologically, it's disheartening, because that means 10,000, and then we average it out. We could be looking at 40,000, 45,000 for a market that was getting close to 100,000 units in the late 2010s. There are several reasons for that, because of the intense competitive environment, which Porsche stated in the presser. But just lack of, I think, the competition, the whatever, Xiaomi SU7 Ultra, compared when they launched, they compared the specs to the Taycan Turbo GT, and every spec was better than the Taycan Turbo GT. And how do you compete? And they maybe also in terms of allocation, maybe they of allocating the vehicles to other regions, plus the fact that in Porsche China, they're resizing the dealership footprint. That's their priority this year. So, but I guess from Porsche's perspective, it looks like it was worse than they expected on their own. But, I mean, last year was 30% off, right? So not surprising. For all the German manufacturers, right? Whatever Volkswagen Group, Audi, the BBAs. This is going to be a down year. Still, So first quarter is a representative of that.
Hey, this is going to potentially be a down decade. If the United States, if we continue to have tariffs on EU imports, automotive imports, Porsche's going to have to build here. Audi's going to have to build here. And that'll take time and a lot of investment. And I thought Porsche 3 or 4 years ago was immune to a lot of this stuff, but I also want to point to the fact that it might be the canary in the coal mine. There are a few things that aren't in Porsche's control. The Chinese economy, the tariffs from the United States really pulling down the Chinese economy, or the sentiment on the Chinese economy even further. Rich people aren't as rich maybe in China. And so I'm curious to see the Rolls numbers, the Bentley numbers, the really, really ultra premium vehicles, to see if there's any softness in that demand in the China market. So
certainly they're down, or not. That don't look pleasant. And I think BMW was down over 17%, Mercedes down 10%, Volkswagen Group was down 10%, I think. And their sale of BEVs was down significantly in China in the first quarter. I think it was like 25,000 units as a group. And while they're preparing their offensive, right, the next stage of offensive of these in China for China models coming up, which are slated for 2026 launch. So still a painful 2025 to get taken care of, and then we go from there. And really, it's a huge bet, and I'm not sure. These in China for China, especially with this, they're also going to announce this that the Horizon based kind of the NOA system for their new models, the level 2 plus plus. We'll see how that goes, how that compares with the rest of the competition. And
the increased anxiety from the Porsche team or the Porsche management was that prior to the Trump administration, they felt that the United States could be a bit of a pressure release valve for them, because sales are increasing in the United States. But with the tariff situation, and now the tariffs making their cars more expensive, number one, but the tariffs creating sentiment for people like you and me having a lot less confidence in a growing economy in the United States, that also is going to affect vehicle sales. Whereas they thought, okay, we can level off and try to find that bottom in the China market. That 42% would just blew my mind. And we're talking a company that only sells 320, 330,000 units a year. So 1, 10, 100, 1,000 vehicles is actually pretty material from a how it hurts the company.
Yeah, luckily they're only the 25% tariffs on autos remains for now, for at least for the next 90 days, right?
Oh, I guarantee you. So any other March numbers from foreign automakers?
That was the most I think we have. I think GM reported numbers. I forget the numbers, but I mean it's going to be all down.
So what are your thoughts on the veracity of the EU lifting tariffs on Chinese EVs?
If I take a word out of von der Leyen's, the president of EU Commission's mouth, she said everything remains on the table. So my view is that this is not new news. because the discussions have been ongoing ever since they went into effect. And now with the recent talk between Li Qiang and von der Leyen and the Minister of Commerce, Wang Wentao, and what's his name? The EU Economic Minister, Sefcovic. I think this came out of their talks that they want to talk about this minimum pricing. So I think to me, it's just continuation of talks that have been ongoing, and everything remains on the table. But it'll be very hard for the EU to walk back and say, given that they've done so much study into it and put that into place, unless really something that China compromises that will make them do it to eliminate these tariffs. Unless that happens, I think it's very hard to walk back from what's been in place.
Let me also emphasize that the U.S.-China trade war is also going to really hurt the Chinese economy at a moment of weakness already. So it's not just the United States that's going to suffer economically, and it becomes a stare down almost between the U.S. government and the Chinese government, who can endure the most pain, because there will be pain. And so if the EU lifts tariffs, then that to me indicates that von der Leyen has spoken with Ola, has spoken with Bluma, has spoken with Zipsa.
And they've had this automotive industry roundtable.
But already. Let me finish. They went from "we believe we can compete" still to "we're surrendering and we need China's cooperation, so we have to give them something substantial in order to do that." That's kind of how I look at it. They went from the automaker leadership in Germany and in Europe, generally speaking, was like, I'm still optimistic that we can find a bottom and that we can salvage the China market. And I think it feels like they've lost that optimism, and it's almost like if they are to pull the tariffs, which I don't think they will they reduce them? Perhaps. Will there be there's going to be some requirements, I believe, local requirements to manufacture locally over a certain period of time, because I point back to Xpeng and GAC using Magnasteyr to ship kits to Austria. I don't think that's going to be enough for the EU to be like, yeah, if you guys all do that, we'll lift the tariffs. I think there needs to be substantial manufacturing being done on EU soil, and an eventuality that X number of employees get hired or X number of vehicles are manufactured locally.
The European automakers, especially the Germans, they would be happy because they are against the tariffs.
Yeah, right, but I don't know if they're wholeheartedly against the tariffs. Right. I think it's a Mienza thing, it's a face thing that they can't say, because they can't be like Tavares and say, "Oh, we need to protect ourselves."
Yeah, sure.
And then,
remember,
10 months later, he's like, "Oh, we love Chinese cars. We should have free trade."
I remember at the end of March, the Ola and the Oliver, they were in China for the China Development Forum. They were there for about a week, meeting various, constituencies. So yeah, so the talks are ongoing, but it's.
Here's the big thing, Lei, and I'd love your thoughts on this. Premium has shifted. The thought of premium has shifted. The understanding of premium has shifted in the China market, but the Germans and the Americans and the Japanese just didn't get that memo yet. It's almost like these stages. The Germans were like, we don't need to do that. oh yeah, how hard can it be? And then, holy cow, this is really hard. And now it's like, oh, we're going to lean into it because China is such an important market. And to show our dedication to that market, we're going to locally design things. Okay. But it took them 100 years to perfect how to build an engine, right?
Yeah, this went into motion only 2 years ago, 2023, right around the shock of the last Shanghai Auto Show, for Volkswagen to say we want to cut development time to what, 3 years, 36 months? Still quite long by China standards. Uh, uh, and more increasingly, what you do what the Chinese do, right? These whether it's the 4-letter Audi brand or the SSC Motor had an event 2 days ago. They had a gala night, and they said something I thought was interesting. They had this fantastic four of Chinese smart driving companies, and these four companies, guess who? It's called the 地大华模, which means Horizon Robotics. Da is DJI, Hua is Huawei, Mo is Momenta. That SAIC Motor and their partners Audi and Volkswagen will be using one of these four to be able to compete. And the Horizon, right? I talked about the Horizon Superdrive that Volkswagen is launching as their level 2++ next year.
You know, the crazy thing too is that as more and more connected vehicles hit the roads in the EU, I don't hear that many people talking about how we're going to regulate data security, data privacy, and cybersecurity. So these are open-ended items, whether they're imported from the United States, whether they're European, domestically built connected vehicles, or imported from China. We can point to countries, but a lot of bad actors aren't affiliated with countries. So that needs to be addressed. And I think everybody is just reacting to try to put out as many fires as they can. But long term, that needs to be understood a lot better and regulated. The EU should lead the way because they're much more concerned about individuals' privacy when it comes to data. So
yeah, well, China is more faster. It's more less strict. And then a couple of new products that were launched this past week: the Han L and the Tan L from BYD, a significantly lower price than their pre-sale pricing. One, and then B10, Elite Motor B10 launched. And while they launched that model starting at 100,000 RMB, $15,000, they announced the giveaway of the highway it's called the NGP? No, not the NGP. It's NAP, highway NAP. They're adding that free, so it's almost it's a non-price cut, right? And retroactive to earlier buyers. So they're giving money back. So the bloodbath continues. And Chery announced a series of hybrid products at lower prices 2 nights ago.
As we lead up to Auto Shanghai 2025.
Yeah. And Tesla even launched a cheaper Cybertruck in the in the US. I said it was contagious.
Wow.
Yeah, $62,000 after credits.
40,000 unit sales in 2024. I'd say that's a pretty big disappointment from a sales standpoint, but that's what happens when you design to the extreme and then you jump into politics. Anyways, maybe this is a short one because I don't really have that much more. You saw that TechCrunch article about Slate Auto?
Which auto?
So there's an article in TechCrunch. It's not much of a scoop, but it does detail the company. There's a manufacturing conglomerate called Build, and it's a Jeff Bezos backed initiative where basically bringing back manufacturing. One of the companies it's supporting is a company called Slate Auto. It's based in Troy, so it's right in my backyard.
Yeah.
About 300 employees. They're going to have a launch event later this month, and it's gotten some external funding according to the TechCrunch article. And they're targeting a $25,000 electric pickup truck. And so I wrote a lot about it in this week's newsletter because I reminded everyone that the Ford F-150 Lightning was supposed to come out at $40,000. The Cybertruck was supposed to come out at $40,000. And so the idea that an American company right off the get can get to $25,000, especially in this environment where the tariffs are in place, impossible.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, we have another U.S. smart EV startup out in the West Coast that's gloating right now because of this tariffs, right? And they're about to launch the FX, and supposedly the $30,000, $25,000 EREV.
No, I applaud them. I don't begrudge anyone. I have an issue with throwing out a number that's not likely. Now, can they get to 25,000 and be profitable? Maybe, but it would take probably 500,000 units of sales, 400,000 units of sales. Where's the capacity for the mineral mining? Where's the capacity for the mineral refining? Where's the cell capacity to build those things? You're not going to buy those cells from a Korean or a Japanese manufacturer here in the United States, not affordably. And so again, that 25,000 just seems like we're chasing a ghost. And here's the away bias that you and I have. Like, that thing is going to be so decontented, and then we jump on a plane next Saturday, both of us, and then see what we can buy in China for $30,000 or $25,000, and we're gonna be like, that's the away bias that you and I have, because we know what can be purchased at $25,000, $30,000 in China, and it's going to be substantially more from a value and feature standpoint than anything that the United States in the short term is going to be able to launch. So
it's China spoiled bias.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else, man?
No, I think this is the last, or second to last one before
Second to last.
Next Friday will be the last one that we do in the US, right before the auto show. Just it's gonna be the biggest by far in the world. 360,000 square meters, 13 halls.
And they're moving it to Puxi. Companies. Is that right? Did they move it to Puxi?
Well, it's always been there. The flower, the China.
Yeah, that's in Pudong, isn't it?
Puxi.
Oh, it's in Puxi. Okay.
Yeah, it's in Puxi. So it's a maze. Every year we go there, it's a maze. Trying to figure out where to go. And then really, I think.
And then, I will always remember, like, you and I kind of doing our thing, because I think you and I mean to, like, be together, but then we just kind of get lost. And then I will always remember being at the show in Shanghai last time, and then getting a bunch of WeChats. Hey man, are you at the Tesla booth? And I run over there. And then by the time I get over there, I was like two buildings over, two flower petals over, one flower petal over.
Yeah.
And And then by the time I get there, all the Baoan in the black shirts or black jackets are like surrounding the Tesla booth. So,
And
oh my goodness.
and Lei Jun and his entourage is gonna be another spectacle. Walking around. Oh, I hate that. But yeah.
Let me take a look at comments or questions here real quick. So let's do this. We'll dive a little bit deeper next week into the Shanghai Auto Show. But while I'm reading some of these messages, Lei, what are your expectations for this year? Have you heard any rumors or anything?
About the show?
Yeah.
Well, we've already seen Volkswagen announce the 7+1 kind of the lineup. Mostly the Volkswagen brand and the two Audi brands, right? The four rings Audi brand and the four letter Audi brand. They're all launching their new vehicles. So expect a lot of China tech collaboration from the foreign automakers again. And then big SUVs. That's the thing. From Lee Mega. Yeah, Mega. Mega is launching two new editions. One, I think, an Ultra edition, and then another, a home.
Like a DD. Like a DD.
Yeah, like a face. You can face to face, and I'd really actually pay more attention to the Chinese tech companies exhibiting there. There will be two halls dedicated to this Chinese tech and supplier base. The Momentas, the lidar companies, all the ADAS. They're probably worth a tour, rather than the.
Here's a question from SPX Lei. With the trade war escalating and TikTok being forced sale by US, as unthinkable as it might be, could Shanghai Giga and Megapack Shanghai face similar forced sale situation or even worse fate?
I hope not. I think that's the last. I really can't see that happening. If it does, then that means that the U.S.-China relationship is really just tanked to the bottom forever. What do you think? I mean,
I don't see it either. Number one, Tesla employs a lot of people in Shanghai. Number two, Tesla still brings excitement to the space. The brand does.
Speaking of Tesla, right? Their March numbers is quite good, and only a small portion of that 78,000 units were exported. So it's damn good, and they're still.
So the 3 years of free money is working a little bit. So
it's definitely working.
Let's see how long it works, because we knew that we knew the sales numbers would get goosed because people were waiting for Juniper. Some people were waiting for Juniper, and then in addition, there was an incentive placed on top of that. So let's look at April, May, and June to see if there's consistent theme there. Because I would go ahead.
And NIO and Volvo just announced heavy discounting or addition of incentives, and that seems to pull up demand based on the weekly numbers. So we'll see how April is. But
here's another question.
Yeah.
Is there any precedent cases of critical industry company being targeted? So SPX, I look at it this way. China wants to show the world that it's friendly to foreign companies. And so, to Lei's point, I think you're pointing to like nuclear options that I don't think I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think we're going to be there for quite some time because, like I said, Tesla is actually, a lot of these, like TikTok, how many employees do they have in the United States? They're all salespeople, effectively. It affects the influencers, but Trump doesn't really care about that. And so I don't know if I can think of any targeted company, a
Well,
U.S.
China
company,
is
anyways. So
what they're doing investigation into DuPont, I think, right?
okay,
DuPont. I mean, could that happen? Possibly. They can blacklist companies, which they announced several U.S. companies during this recent week. Uh,
yeah,
if you
you're
put,
right.
if you put
But
Tesla in there,
yeah, Tesla is not DuPont. DuPont is
no,
not
but
Tesla. So
right. But if you were to put Tesla in there, then that means the relations is really, like I said, uh, gotten bad. If we get to that point.
so those are the only comments that I have. Conrad gives you kudos. You're right about the trade stuff earlier when you talked about it. So I thought this was going to be a pretty early ending, but we've
Yeah,
been on
well,
for 45
it's
minutes.
only 44 minutes, so it's earlier
That's
than
still
our.
long. I thought it was going to be like 30 because I was like, but I don't know. So next week I will be in San Diego for 2 days. Qualcomm is having an event. They're trying to create demand for a autonomous vehicle chip,
Well,
and
we talked about that they're moving
so
into this. They do this smart cockpit, but now they're providing the lead motor. I think, as a matter of fact, the B10, their suite of the smart
what's available.
driving, right? The chips. So kind of competing with the NVIDIA.
So I don't know what to expect, but I'll check out, ask a bunch of questions, and then come home for 2 days, and then jump on a plane again for a long flight. But everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk with you all next week.
Thank you. Bye bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at LeiXing77. That's LEIXING77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.